come out and share some of the things that we're working on through the health department. So today we are going to be talking about buckling up, as Mariana mentioned, but we have a little bit of a different spin on it today than what we normally have talked about. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history. First of all, I just wanted to acknowledge, Box Elder County, people that work for Box Elder County. There's a variety of different roles and responsibilities, obviously. Good morning. A variety of different roles and responsibilities with the county. Some employees may be behind a desk all day. Some may be in and out going to court or going to inspections. Some may be behind the wheel all day or in and out of a vehicle all day. So there's a lot of variety with Box Elder County employees. So I just kind of wanted to acknowledge that. We appreciate the work that Box Elder County employees do for us. And again, understand that there's a variety of things that go into that big kind of moving wheel there. So our goal today is really to build this culture of safety. Our number one first goal is to raise concern. We want to talk about seatbelts, we want to talk about restraints, and we want to provide some information, and we want to build hope. We're actually doing really great things in our county, and I get to share that with you today. For so many years, working at the health department, let me back up just a little bit. For about 10 years, I worked in a hospital, and it was in and out of the ER. So I saw a lot of tragedies. I saw a lot of injuries, a lot of things that could have been prevented. But the hospital ER obviously is on kind of the other end of response. And so working for the health department now for about 18 years altogether, we have more of a prevention approach. So it's more, let's not get to the emergency room. We want to do some prevention. But for so many years, when we've done education with health and safety, you probably have noticed the campaigns, and they've been more scare tactics, kind of like scare the health into you, right? So that's kind of been the format, and that's kind of been the way it worked for many, many years. So this today is going to be a little bit different spin. It's not going to be fear-based. It's not going to be scare tactics. We're going to come at it a little different way. We do want to raise some concern, and we want to acknowledge some of the things that we need to work on, but we want to build hope. We know that hope empowers people, and it creates a more positive frame so that we can move forward working together in more of a cohesive manner. So we do have reasons for concern, unfortunately. A motor vehicle crash happens every 9 minutes in our state. And unfortunately, we've been seeing a lot of crashes this summer. And that is somewhat typical. Unfortunately, we do see more crashes in the summer. Oftentimes people think about safety and they think about winter roadways and all of the scary, driving the canyon and all of that. And that is definitely a concern, but we actually do consistently see more crashes in the summertime. And it makes sense. There's more traffic on the roads. People are traveling, nicer weather, so people get out more, that kind of thing. People sometimes become complacent. They don't realize, what chances they may be taking. I know, again, just personal experience, how many of us have gotten ready to go on summer vacation and got all the kids' stuff packed up, and we got all our stuff packed up, and we're thinking, well, if we throw them in the car about 9 p.m., they'll sleep through the night so that we can travel through a couple of states before they even wake up, and we don't have to hear that, are we there yet? We get to hear it 15 less times, right? So that might be a good strategy for our sanity, for driving a long distance with children. But oftentimes what happens is we are not fueled and we're not ready to drive safely. So we're taking that risk of throwing the whole family in the car and driving overnight when really our body is telling us it's time to shut down, it's time to sleep, it's time to rest. So consequently we have situations where people fall asleep and things like that. Because they're excited when they first get out on the road and the adrenaline's going and the anticipation of seeing relatives or getting to Disneyland or whatever it is. But unfortunately, after some time goes by, then we run into the drowsies, and we start to have the head bobs, and so then it puts us at risk for crashes, obviously. But every 9 minutes, a crash happens in the state of Utah. That's pretty significant, okay? And then just to kind of throw up a few of these others, some of the reasons why we see injuries with crashes People think that they're doing the right thing. People think that they're taking precautions. They're taking full advantage of all the safety gear within their vehicles, which is really important. It's really important. That's one of the first things I feel like people should do when you get the manual of that new car or newer car, is to go through and find out what are all those safety features and take full advantage of them. If they come with a car, we might as well utilize them. Some of the very basic things that we overlook is just how to wear a seatbelt. A seatbelt seems pretty straightforward. You pull it across you and you click it in. But we want to make sure that we're wearing that across our shoulder. You see shorter people have a trouble. Sometimes you'll see it up on their chin or on their neck up here. And most of the newer vehicles, for quite some time now, have an adjustment where you can move that down, so take that angle down so that it's across the shoulders. Really what we're trying to do is we're trying to access the stronger points of our body for any kind of crash force. So our shoulders and our hips are the strongest parts of our body. So running across our shoulder, not behind our back, not our arm over top. We have a seatbelt running across our ribs right here. That's going to be some significant internal injuries in a crash, and spinal injuries as well. So we want to make sure that we're wearing that across there. And then when it comes to the lap belt, we want to make sure that we're wearing it low on the hips, underneath of our belly, not over our belly. Okay, especially like pregnant women, we wear it underneath our belly. We wear it on the strong points of our body, on our hips. And that goes the same with like kids in booster seats. That's one of the common things that happens with children is they're in a car seat. Most people are pretty good about putting their kids in car seats. Not always super great about having them in there correctly, but they're pretty good about putting little ones and infants in car seats. But then as they get older, if you think about it, you remove a layer of protection every time you move them to the next stage. So you go from a rear-facing infant seat, which is designed to take up some of that crash force, and they're backwards, so they're not taking it like the whiplash kind of injuries like we experience forward-facing. So keeping them rear-facing as long as possible is really important. They say up to at least age 2, and longer if your car seat will allow it, that's great too. Keep them rear-facing, and then we turn them forward-facing, and we keep them in a full 5-point harness. And we keep them in there until they've outgrown that by height and weight. And then we move them to the next phase, which is probably going to be a booster seat. It's either a high-back booster seat, or it could be a low seat, but we want to make sure that we have vehicle seat behind them so they have some of that neck support. Which brings us to adults as well. Most of us don't think about that neck restraint. We think about it for comfort when we get to be the passenger on that long trip to Disneyland and we get to recline back and have a little rest. But that neck support, that is actually meant, obviously for a reason. It's part of the safety devices in your vehicle, and it should be positioned behind the ears so that you have plenty of neck support in a crash. So when we move kids, again, as we talk about moving them through the stages and we move them into a booster seat, we want to make sure that they have that belt low on the hips and across their shoulder. Sometimes we have to snug it in and tighten it in to keep them into place, and that's fine too. And then when we move them into an adult seat belt, that's when they're the most vulnerable, honestly. Because an adult seatbelt in your vehicle is designed for an average size adult. It's not meant for, really not designed for a 10-year-old child. So the law in our state says that they need to be in a booster seat up to age 8 and 4 foot 9 inches, which is actually pretty tall. When I take my little guide out to the fair, or out to the pool, or wherever I take it, and I show kids this is how tall you have to be before you can get out of a booster seat. They're like, well, Mom's barely that tall. So I get a lot of flack that way. But really, again, it's because the seatbelt is designed for adults. And when we move them into an adult seatbelt too quickly, they're not adequately protected. Okay? So those are just a couple of things. Another thing as far as improper and inconsistent use of restraints, sometimes people will, I grew up in Morgan, so small town, right? So growing up in Morgan, nobody wore their seatbelts. Of course, that was quite a few years ago too, but and our mentality is changing, thankfully. But we would generally say, or you'd hear things, people say things, and I hear it here in Box Elder County too. Well, I don't really buckle up to go to town, but I buckle up if I'm going to get on the interstate or I'm going to drive the canyon. And so what that does when we do it sometimes, but we don't do it consistently, is it brings down the importance of that actual act. So we get complacent again, and we're less likely to consistently buckle up. So pretty soon now we find ourselves, we've gone to Ogden and back, or we've gone to Logan and back, and we just didn't think about it because we just got into the habit of getting in the car and going. Where if we can develop the habit, just that 2-second click, if we can develop that habit and use it every single time, then we never have to worry, did I have it on the right time? So every ride, every trip. Another thing to think about is people will tell me, well, I don't need a seatbelt, I have an airbag in my car. Again, airbags are great safety devices, and they're equipped in all vehicles nowadays, but they do have some limitations. An airbag can't protect you and can't cushion you from a frontal collision if you're in the back seat, or if you've been forced over to the side, or you've been already ejected out through the moonroof, the sunroof, whatever. So being buckled in place, then that cushion is going to help buffer and help protect and take up some of that impact. But if we're not in the right place, it actually can cause some injuries, which is why we tell people not to put little kids in front of airbags. Airbags go off with a lot of force. If we do have to have a small person or a child in the front seat, which we try to keep them in the back seat until they're teenagers, until they're 13, then if we can keep them out of the front seat, they're better protected in the rear seats. But if we do have to put them up front, if we run out of seatbelts in the back, or we have a little small grandma in the front or whatever, we want to push the seat back all the way, still keep that proper restraint, or if possible, you can even turn off the airbag if you have to put a child up front. The airbags, again, are a great safety device, but we want to make sure that we're not sitting right on top of it either. We want to sit at least a piece of paper, about 10 inches from the airbag. Let it deploy and let it kind of fully expand and do its thing instead of sitting right on top of it. Okay, so if we can push our seat back a little bit, that is the best. Okay. So rates of not wearing seatbelts are generally not as great in rural areas. Okay, we think a little bit differently in the rural areas. We sometimes don't like to be told what to do. We have just kind of a little bit of a different mindset. And some of us are out changing water in the fields. And some of us are in and out of the vehicle. So there's some understanding why that mentality's been kind of formed. But rural crashes, unfortunately, are more dangerous. We have more crashes in urban areas. Makes sense, more cars, more crashes. But honestly, the rural crashes are more dangerous, generally. They have more, there's usually higher speeds involved, less improved roadways. We got gravel roads, we got more slick, icy roads, we got windy canyons, we got animals on our roadways. There's just a variety of different reasons why rural area crashes tend to be more deadly. Also, we have maybe we may have compromised access to emergency help, so it can make it more serious as well. If we're up Docks Flat or we're out to Snowville, it's going to take a little bit more time than if we had a crash on the middle of I-15 down in Salt Lake, right? We're not going to have 3 different hospitals within, a 10-mile radius. So those are some reasons and some things to think about as well. I did a presentation very similarly to this at a work site in June, and I went in to just double check the stat here on the bottom one. And when I did that presentation in June, there were 104 deaths in the state of Utah so far this year. So when I went on yesterday just to get the most up-to-date stat and saw 155, was quite alarmed by that and sad. That's a lot of people that have lost family members, coworkers. That's a huge impact across our state. And again, the summer months, things heat up, people get active, and it generally does increase over the summer months. But we want to do everything we can to try to decrease that risk. Okay, so I do have a couple of videos that I've got in my presentation, and we'll cross our fingers and hope that they work. If they don't, I have them. I have access to them, so we can go in and it'll. Okay, let's just go ahead and get started on this one. So I want you to keep in mind, and I want you to watch for as this vehicle rolls, there are crash test dummies inside. You see the first one that just just went out and above the screen. Did you see that? First one. So these crash test dummies, what I want you to keep in mind while you're watching this is they look like rag dolls. They look like fluffy stuff, but they are not. They are weighted to represent a human body. So they might not have bones and they might not have joints like we do, but they are actually weighted to represent a human body. So in this crash, you'll see there in the back of the have to do this one. Right here you can see this contraption out of the back of this, I think it's an excursion or something like that. That's actually a camera and it's shining inside of the vehicle. There were actually 6 occupants when it started. And there are 5 that are in the foreground or in the background of this picture now. Okay, there's one still inside the vehicle. You can go on YouTube and you can watch that video. You can go to the Utah Zero Fatalities website, which I'll give you here in a little bit, and you can watch it as well. And you can watch the video from inside the vehicle. None of the occupants were restrained. So one of them stays in, but you'll see the crazy ride that one takes. Okay, and you can see that first one that went out. I'm just going to play it one more time. The first one that went out was actually the last one to land. Did you notice that? He was tossed pretty high. And another thing to kind of consider is in a crash, in a rollover especially, okay, I was lucky to get it once, I guess. In a rollover crash, whatever way the vehicle is moving is generally the way that you're going to get tossed if you're going to be ejected, which means the vehicle is probably coming behind you and rolling in the same direction. I actually had a cousin that was killed. She was in a rollover crash in a small pickup truck, and she was tossed out of the vehicle, and the jack from the back of the truck is actually what took her life. So that followed the vehicle, was tossed out of the vehicle in the same direction she was, and that's what hit her. Another video that I would encourage you to take a peek at, and I'm just going to kind of show you it on YouTube here. It's called Embrace Life. It's actually a British public service, and it's, let's see, where do I have it? So the quality isn't super great, but I want to show it to you because it shows how a family is going to rally to do whatever they can to protect one another. Isn't that our human instinct? That we're going to rally together to do whatever we need to do. Okay, we're going to come to our loved one's need, right, at their time of need. So this depicts that very well. So I wanted to just kind of show you that.
Here's a question all sorts of organizations face. How do you get people to do something important but without preaching to them?
Well, one man came up with an answer that has turned into a world.
Let's not watch that one, okay? So, again, you'll see that that video, demonstrates again how family rallied together in their time of need. And again, it's kind of the opposite spin of like scare the help into you. I showed the one of the rollover situation just because I wanted to, again, show how important it is to stay inside the vehicle. We're much safer inside the confines of the vehicle and having that support. And if you notice that SUV at the end of the video, it had rolled many times, several times, but the frame and the structure of it was pretty intact. So had those people remained in the vehicle, they probably would have been pretty well protected. I'm sure they would have been jostled around, but they probably would have been pretty well protected. But then when you switch to a video like this, it kind of gives us that idea that when we restrain ourselves, we're not only protecting ourselves, we're protecting our family as well, aren't we? We're doing it for ourselves, but we're also doing it for them. Just like we would expect them to do that for us. We want them around, we depend on them, we love them, we cherish them, and we want to do that for them as well. So when we make a decision and we jump in the car and say, well, it's only me, and it's my decision, and I get to decide, that's true. It is a law. We'll talk about that here in a little bit too. But even then, we still get to decide, and the fact of the matter is we're not just making that decision for ourselves. We're making that decision for our family, for our friends, for our coworkers, our employers. Because when something devastating happens, it doesn't just affect us. So we've been working on restraints and seatbelts for a really long time. It's been going on. You've seen click it or ticket campaigns. You've seen all these campaigns for a very long time. In 2000 is when I went to a week-long intense training to become a car seat technician. So some of that information I shared with you earlier. Some of the information that we've put in this little flyer that we have, it kind of goes through some of the most common things that we see, some of the most common incorrect things that we see in car seats, or questions that parents ask us. But I went to that training in 2000. And I was like, oh, well, gosh, somehow my kids survived me. How hard could it be? Like, I was thinking we'd go down to a training, would be done in 2 or 3 hours, and would be done. Would be good. It was a week of training. We learned about all kinds of car seats. We learned about all kinds of seatbelt systems. We learned about crash forces in a crash and how that all works. So it was really, really intense. And I'm glad that I had that opportunity because it really opened my eyes. Even though my kids were out of car seats by then, it still opened my eyes to all of the little tiny things that we just take for granted or the things that we don't necessarily stop and think about. So again, we've been working on restraints. We've done a lot with kids at high school level, doing seatbelt competitions with high schools, things like that. And we've done some community education as well. We go out to health fairs and we've done some things like that. We'll continue to do that. But in 2014, something changed. Box Elder County and the Bear River Health Department, we were awarded a grant specifically for restraints. So basically just seat belts, not even car seats so much, which we still talk about, but basically just seat belts. And what they said they wanted us to do, and we teamed up with the Highway Safety Office out of Salt Lake that represents our whole state, and also Montana State University. They assisted us with some technical support and are still working with us. And they said to us, we really want you to make this a personalized campaign for your area. We want you to speak to the people of your area. And the grant actually started out to focus on rural counties. San Juan, San Pete, and Box Elder County were the 3 that were selected in the very beginning. So, and that was unfortunately because we had lower rates in the state. And they were like, we got to figure out something in these rural areas. We got to get the seatbelt use up. So in 2014, they did some research. They did some surveys where they called and talked to people and asked questions, did some email surveys. They did observational surveys where they went out and watched to see how many of our county members were buckled up. And at that point, we had a seatbelt rate of about 73%. So again, they said, we want you to personalize this campaign. We want it to reflect your community. So they said, we're going to make this billboard and we're going to have it out on the highways, and we want it, again, to reflect your community, all of the different sectors within your community. And I said, well, if you want it to reflect our community, then I think our community should be in it. What better way if we have people from our community representing our sectors of the population? They're going to actually be more involved, and they're going to help spread the word as well. So they said, oh, well, okay, we'll get a photographer and we'll plan a photo shoot. So you get the people and we'll meet you up in Brigham City. So we actually took photos out of, well, we did some inside, we did some outside, we did a bunch of different things. But this is the poster that they ended up coming up with. And you'll see here, everybody in this photograph were residents of Box Elder County at the time. We have healthcare represented, we have young people, we have some business, which is actually Lee Perry. He was on his way to the legislature that day. We have military and law enforcement, one of our officers, Nolan Harper, that was assisting us that day. We have farmers representative. That's a huge part of our community. So we've got irrigation boots. That's actually Mike Nelson in his irrigation boots. And then we even have a steel worker from one of our steel plants, okay, with his steel-toed boots there. So you can see this is reflective of some of what Box Elder County represents. And at that point, with this Together for Life campaign, which was the name of it, they really wanted us to focus more on a positive spin. So instead of saying, oh, 30% of us are going to die, they wanted us to say, you know what, 70% of us are buckled and we're protected, and we're doing, you know, we're going to be healthier and safer because of those choices that we're making. And so I was really excited from the very beginning with this campaign, again, because of the positivity. I tend to be an optimist, so I like when we can reach people with hope and inspire them to do even greater, better things and healthier things instead of scaring. So with that survey in 2014 when we first started out, some of the questions that were asked and some of the responses you'll see here, we found that 96% agree it's important to protect myself by always wearing a seatbelt. Pretty straightforward, okay? So far majority thought it was important to protect ourselves. 96% wanted the people they care about to also be safe, right? 83% even reported having a specific family rule about wearing a seatbelt. So that's great. But on the flip side, 47% did not think most would agree that it was important to protect themselves. 95% did not think most adults always wear their seatbelt. 70% is the majority, right? So most were wearing their seatbelt, but we still had definite room for improvement. 54% did not think most adults would agree it's their responsibility to get others to buckle up. So if an adult in the vehicle doesn't feel like it's their responsibility to make sure their cargo, people or whatever, right, is safe and is restrained, whose responsibility is it, right? It's my car, my rules, right? So I put this picture up there because perception is really important. Perception, when the kitty looks in the mirror and sees a lion, he feels empowered and he feels strong and he feels capable. But when we have a perception that it's not that important, most people don't think it's important. Most people don't think it's their responsibility. Most people aren't doing it. What kind of impact do you think that can have? Do you think that's going to strengthen people's thoughts about buckling up, or do you think it's going to weaken it? It's probably going to weaken it, right? Yeah, so we want to clarify some things. We want to say 70% are buckling up. That's great. 73% at the time, okay? That's great. There's obviously room for some improvement. We want to protect everyone, every single trip, every single ride. Okay, knowing again, some crashes are devastating. Some crashes are not survivable. We know that. I know that. I've been in the ER, right? We know that. But we take every precaution that we can because we care, because we matter, because people depend on us, and because that's what's important for us to do. So in 2015, we started strengthening that Together for Life message, and we started to incorporate more of it throughout the community. I was really excited about this opportunity, actually. I got Bear River cheerleaders and Box Elder cheerleaders to come together and help me with this project, which was really exciting. And if you look strategically, I have a Bear River Box Elder, Bear River Box Elder. I purposely did that so that it was sending a message. It's not them against us. It's not, it's about all of us coming together. We may have some differences, we may have even some rivalries or whatever, but it's about all of us coming together. And the girls were so cute. They were like, yep, we'll do whatever you want us to do. So this banner, I don't know if any of you remember seeing it. I've had it in Peach Days, I've had it in Manaway's Parade, I've had it a couple of different places. But it actually is two long banners, actually. So it's like this long banner on one side with a buckle on one end, and then the long banner with the receptacle end. So you can kind of weave around and then come together, and it shows that we're working together to buckle up. So it says Together for Life, to buckle up. And then this was the next billboard that we had designed. And in 2016, we actually started to promote more of that family rural focus. We wanted people to understand, that it's just part of how we work. This is what we do in our family. This is one thing. This is one standard rule, one consistent message we're always wanting to give our kids. If we start out with little teeny babies in car seats, which honestly any of us that have driven with an infant, we're a better driver if we're not worried about where the baby is, right? If that baby's in an infant seat, and they're restrained and they're buckled in, we're going to be a much better, more attentive, safer driver, and we're going to protect our child at the same time. Most people know that. Most people do that. Again, as they get older is when we tend to get a little bit more complacent, and we start to see some challenges there. But if we are consistently saying with each step and each stage, buckle up, and we make that a family rule, that gets ingrained. So when they're 16 and they're out on the road for the first time by themselves, as a parent, we're not going to have to say, did I prepare them? Are they going to buckle up? If it's always been second nature, they don't even have to think about it. And we've made it a family rule from the very beginning, then we've set them up for a much safer journey that way. So in 2016 is when we kind of started to push that family rule a little bit more. And we started to go out and talk about who can you challenge to buckle up? Who do you know? Who do you care about? Who do you love that maybe doesn't make it a habit? Let's encourage them. Let's support them. And let's ask them, or let's tell them whatever we need to do. When they get in our vehicle, let's lead by example, if nothing else, okay? But let's ask them, let's challenge them to buckle up, because working together, all of us can bring more results. So in 2017, you may have seen us out at the county fair. My husband always teases. He's like, you've got pictures in the men's room. What is going on here? Well, we had posters everywhere. We had them in the men's room. We had them in the ladies' room. We had them out in the barns. You can see the big pull-up banners. And we had a bunch of stuff out there, okay? And we're just trying to go where the people are, trying to promote that message. And so we were providing some materials. Life ain't no 8-second ride. Buckle up. It's the law. So let's talk about the law for just a quick second. So in our state, as of May of 2015, we now have a primary seatbelt law in our state. Probably y'all are aware of that. But what that actually means is, before that law was passed, it was a secondary law, which meant if you were pulled over for some other offense and you were not buckled, you could be cited. Well, as of May of 2015, as a primary law, you can be pulled over for that very one thing, for not being restrained, okay? And in the beginning, there was a period of time where warnings were given. It was meant to be education and get people understanding that this is the law, we need to adjust, this is what we're doing on a statewide level to help support and protect the citizens and the travelers, the visitors through our community as well. That's why you see, you're in Utah, buckle up, it's the law. So with the primary law now being in place for some time, that warning phase has now gone away. So an officer has the discretion to write a warning ticket if he would like, but he or she is not under any obligation to do that. She or he could write a ticket for the very first offense. And it's kind of interesting. One of the officers just shared with me not too long ago that we had a crash the beginning part of summer through our county, and the gentleman had mentioned to the officer, he rolls up on scene, and apparently he had rolled, and he had to be cut out of his seatbelt, and life-saving measures were administered. He was taken to the hospital. I mean, it was a very serious crash. He did survive, and he told the officers, he's like, I was given 2 warning tickets in the last few years. Not too long ago, I think it was within a month of his crash, he was giving a ticket. Not a warning, he was actually given a citation. And he started buckling up that day. Had he not been buckled up when he experienced this rollover, he probably would have severely different circumstances. So sometimes that's just enough of a push for us to understand how important it is. And now he's like, oh, thank goodness I did it. I'm so thankful that I did. I don't know why I resisted. Just didn't think about it. Just didn't grow up with it. It just wasn't a value that I had. But it's definitely a value I have now. So those things like that, I hear stories like that, that's very encouraging to understand that, it's a mindset. It can be different. Like, it could be the difference of letting go of some pride. It could be the difference of making a decision to lead as an example. It could be making a decision to be a little bit uncomfortable for a while because it feels unfamiliar and foreign and it's not what I'm used to. But it also can make the difference of your children and your grandchildren and their friends that are going to be a huge influence on your children, or your parents even. It could be it could be an example to them to make that decision. So in 2017, we had a few other things going on as well. This is a radio spot. So you may have heard some radio spots. You may have heard some Pandora spots. We had some videos. I'll show you those, or I'll attempt to.
4 people, only 3 clicks. We're only going across town. Nothing will happen. But what if something did? It's my truck, my friends, my responsibility.
Hey guys, buckle up.
Most drivers in Box Elder County, 92%, believe it's their responsibility to get others to wear a seatbelt. Let's be together for life and always wear a seatbelt. To learn more, please visit togetherforlifeutah.org.
Anybody remember hearing that? Okay, so it was last year. And then again, some of you may have seen some of these ads. This one was at Walker.
I am her daughter.
I am his brother.
I am her mom.
I'm his coworker.
I'm his friend.
I am her husband.
We are many things to many different people. When we wear a seatbelt, it's not just for us, it's for all of them. Let's be together for life and always wear a seatbelt.
Here's another one that you may have seen.
Hey, Dad, what's the rule?
Thanks, son.
Most Box Elder County adults, 83%, have a family rule about always wearing a seatbelt. Let's be together for life and always wear a seatbelt.
Anybody see those at Walker? Oh, I know, huh? You sound like me. Maybe we should go check one out. That's right. Okay, so this year, again, we're still working on community partnerships. We've done some presentations with some civic groups, worksite presentations such as this, community events, education. I've partnered with a driver's ed teacher for several years now and do presentations every trimester with him, where the parents of the brand new drivers come in, and so we get an opportunity to do a presentation and chat with them and encourage them as they're preparing their teens and driving with them for the 30 hours out on the roadways, in the daytime and 10 at night, all that good stuff. So we go through all of that criteria with those new drivers and with the parents that are assisting them. And so it's a really good opportunity. I've had parents come up to me and say, you help me with this child You helped me with their car seat when they were 3 years old. And here now they're in driver's ed, which dates me, of course. But that's okay. I'm excited. Like, they made it a family rule. They made it an important part of their family. And now you can see that they're still kind of standing behind that. I was at the Brigham City Pool on the 24th of July, teamed up with the Brigham Hospital. They had their free swim day that day. And we did some education there. And, of course, everybody got a free popsicle, but it came at a cost. They had to receive some education. We did some ATV helmet, bike helmet, seatbelt, car seat, booster seat, how tall you have to be, all of that. We had some fun education with the kids. And, again, was able to run into a few parents that said, you helped me with a car seat with this one, or I saw your presentation at the high school when my 15-year-old was getting ready to drive. And so those conversations are building and growing, and it's the same kind of thing. When we do a presentation like this, we're providing you some materials, and we want you to take it, and we want you to share it with people that you care about. We want to challenge you to share that message, to challenge them to buckle up and pass it forward and pass it on. So it's a continual effort. And guess what? We're making progress. They just did another observational survey in June. We just got the results last week. We are up to 94% in our county now. I am so excited. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Box Elder County now has the highest rate in the state. So and we're a rural county that struggled, okay? We've made progress. And again, it's those conversations that we all are having. It's not anything that one person or one safety coalition or community, which we've worked really hard, but it takes everybody working together. It takes law enforcement leading by example. It takes law enforcement enforcing that law and not always being popular when it comes to that. But it saved that one man's life, right? How many stories would we hear like that? It takes all of us. Just like you hear all the time, it takes a village to make us strong, and that's exactly what we're doing, working together. So our Safe Communities Coalition is a coalition that we have here in Box Elder County, and we focus on a variety of different health and safety topics, but one of them has been the seatbelt, and we've teamed up with the hospital, with Chelsea Claiborne, the trauma nurse down there, and the coordinator, and we've done a lot of presentations in the schools, and we're trying to get that strengthened. But if anybody has suggestions about work sites or church groups or neighborhood or community groups or civic groups where we could go out and talk to them, again, we want to just keep pushing this message out and protecting the citizens of our county. So that's pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited to get to share that. So again, this is just kind of reframing that. It takes a community approach, anywhere from right at us, smack dab in the middle, making the decision to protect ourselves, and then just spreading that out with our family, our friends, our peers, our coworkers, just embracing those policies at your work sites, the state law, things like that. So you can see just all of those different layers, an individual just asking others to wear their seatbelt, families making it a family rule. Again, we do those seatbelt presentations, safe driving in general. We do talk about impaired driving and distracted driving. Promoting bystander engagement is just asking someone to buckle up, asking your buddy, I love you, man, but stay on your own side. Please buckle up, okay? Things like that. Workplace policies, and then just consistent use and seeing that modeled and seeing that reinforced and enforced. So we have lots of reasons for hope. We've talked about concern. We want to protect everyone, but that's because we have lots of reasons to celebrate, and we have lots of things to build hope. Some of us enjoy hanging out with our families. We enjoy just those simple times when we can get away and spend good quality time together. Some of us are anticipating new family members, bringing about new family members or grandchildren even. Some of us look forward to travel and exploring. Maybe some of us look forward to buying a few more toys too, okay? Or walking someone down the aisle, or walking down the aisle ourselves. Hanging out and just enjoying, again, the simpler things in life, having fun with your friends, or sharing a hobby. And then, of course, there's always that one, right, that we look forward to. Some of us are maybe a little closer than others, and we can't wait, right, just when we have the freedom to decide what our day looks like. But again, protecting what's important to us, protecting those that we love, protecting ourselves so that we can be there to enjoy that and model those safe behaviors. And then I just have a couple little silly slides here that are just kind of fun and cute, but 99% chance of surviving a venomous spider bite. But our chances of survival out on the road, 50% if we're not buckled up. Okay? 99.4 mountain climbing and 99.8 chance of surviving hang gliding. But just the simple things about going to the grocery store, dropping our kids off at soccer practice, heading over the canyon to find something yummy for dinner or doing some shopping, that clip could be a life-saving decision for us. So here are a few resources just to kind of wrap up. The togetherforlifeutah.org website, you'll see a lot of the materials that I've talked about today. Click at utah.org is actually, again, coordinated by the Utah Highway Safety Office. And I really like that website because you can go into these different sections. So if you have some specific questions about booster seats or infant seats, you can go to the children's section. If you have something specific about a teen and you want to know about distracted driving or how to talk to them about cell phone use or whatever, which actually, honestly, adults from the studies are worse at texting and driving and using their phones in the car than teenagers are. We've hammered the teenagers pretty hard. But us adults, again, we're leading by example. Even if we have small kids, we're leading by example. We need to be making sure our eyes are on the road, our hands are on the wheel, and our brain is in the game, right? That's how we're going to get from point A to point B safer. And then adults, talking about some of the things just specifically for adults, adjusting our seatbelt if we're a little bit shorter, or knowing how far we should sit from the airbag, how we should position our neck rest, things like that. UtahZeroFatalities.com has a lot of videos, has a lot of stories. There's actually even some stories from some of the people in our community that have faced some pretty tragic situations, and their stories are on that website, just trying to help bring closure to the families and to let them help spread a message, so hopefully no other families have to experience that. Then I've listed the health department website and our Facebook. We periodically have things posted just to reinforce that message. We appreciate it if you share those out. And then at the health department, we also provide monthly car seat clinics. So if you have questions, you need some assistance with installation, give us a call. We'd be happy to schedule a time with you, and we can kind of go through, check for recalls, answer questions that you might have. And occasionally we have funding where we can do a specific checkpoint where we get some funds to provide seats at a low cost amount. We just buy them at low cost, and then we just turn around and sell them for the same cost. So if you have any questions or have interest in that, please give us a call down at the health department. And there's my contact information if anybody has any specific questions. And then I'm just going to grab a couple of these handouts to get to the rest of you, and that's about it for me today. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, so you said about 10 inches from the airbag. Some of us are extremely short. What if you cannot reach the pedal?
Okay, that's a great question. So the question is, if how do you maintain that 10 inches away from the airbag if you're a little bit challenged in the leg area and you're not quite tall enough, or to reach the pedals? So there are a couple of things. Sometimes just adjusting your seat in a way, like nowadays we can have all these newfangled adjustments. It's not just, sometimes we have more than just sliding up and sliding back. Sometimes if we can kind of tip our seat back just a teeny bit, it might give us a little bit more stretch. It may not. But we do want to try to observe that as much as possible. They do actually have pedal extenders, which I know sounds kind of strange, but it's actually just something that goes on the pedal, so the pedals are brought closer to you. And some of our newer vehicles actually have that capability as well, where the pedals can be adjusted just like your seat can be adjusted. So there are a couple of options. Sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. So probably just what I would, kind of my take home would be, don't sit any closer than you have to. You see some people and they're like this with their elbows bent right on the wheel. Just know that that airbag, when it deploys, it's going to go off with a lot of force. And if we can even extend it back just a little bit, that's going to be more helpful. Does that help a little bit? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.